Good morning. Right now it is 9:08 on a Thursday. Feels like a Friday. I am excited because we have a guest in studio. This was supposed to take place on Monday, but due to current situation, I had a blowout in two of my tires. It was dark. It was rainy. I was trying to get my son to school. Had to get a tow. But today there were no issues, and so I have Mrs. Stephanie Clausen here in studio. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for being so understanding on Monday whenever I sent you the message, because I was like, I know I can make it. I'll be a little bit late, or I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. I'm always worried because I don't want to, I know a lot of times, clearing schedules, it's not easy to do, but thank you so much.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us onto the FM, and we are going to get right into this. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to share this video out. We are going to be spreading some awareness on sex trafficking, which I'm going to be honest, sometimes isn't the easiest thing to talk about, but it's reality. So it's something that we need to share and inform young people, parents, and everybody alike. Here we go. Good morning. This is KHEA Radio 99.5 FM. This is Kickstart. I'm Gardy. It's 9:10 a.m. on a interesting weather day. It's not really that cold. It's not really hot, but we're going to be having some fun on KHEA Radio this morning. So I have Mrs. Stephanie Clausen here. Stephanie, I'm glad that you're back. So I think, is this your third time in studio?
It is, and ironically enough, I think every time I've been here, it's been raining.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I thought about that when I pulled up.
Bringing the rain in.
I am. I'm bringing the rain.
Yes. So the first time that you came in, I remember that there was an event that was going to be taking place. I think it was at College of the Mainland.
Yes.
Can you share what the name of that event was? How did it go?
Oh, yeah. So January, I think it was the 24th last year, we had our first collective event at College of the Mainland. And so the reason why we decided to call it collective is because in the anti-trafficking movement, like I had said earlier, it's relational. You have to work together because not every organization does the same outreach or intervention or awareness or education. And so in order to really make an impact in our communities, we have to work together collectively.
Yes.
So we have a group of organizations. There's probably about 13 of us, and we're called the Collective Group. So we started meeting and had this idea like, okay, we're meeting, but not a lot of the community is aware of what all of our organizations do or, what demographic we serve. And so we decided to have the collective event. And it was wonderful. And, when you're putting on an event, and I'm not an event coordinator, I don't know the first thing about it. All I did was reflect on all the events I went to, what I liked about them, what I didn't, and kind of went, okay, let's do this. And it was really great. We had John Clark of Operation Texas Shield came in. And
what do they do?
He really advocates on the legislative side. So
Okay.
He's in the Texas Senate, and he's helping bills pass to protect our kids. And so he is just phenomenal. He came in and showed an amazing video, and I think it just set like the stage for an amazing event. And he shared his heart about how he got to the place where he was through some brokenness in his family that had occurred. And sometimes I think a lot of people disqualify themselves from serving because of things in their life that's happened. But I really, truly believe that our brokenness is what oftentimes qualifies us to do what God's called us to do. And then Love People Not Pixels came and shared about who they were and what their role is in this whole movement of anti-trafficking. And then we had an amazing survivor come and speak. And so I think everybody was there, kind of didn't know what to expect, but it was wonderful. And then every organization that's in our collective group had a table, and you got to go by and meet them and find out, do you want to volunteer? Do you have resources that you can give? And so I think it went great. So
Awesome. So can you tell me what Love People Not Pixels does? What do they do?
So they fight trafficking by reducing the demand. And so when you're talking about sex trafficking, there's supply and demand. So a lot of organizations reach the supply. So they go out to the streets and do outreach, reaching the women who are being prostituted. They go to strip clubs, they go to cantinas, illicit massage parlors. But then you kind of have to step back and go, like, okay, I'm reaching thousands of women. So that means thousands of men are purchasing these women. So what's happening with the men? Where's this demand coming from? And so what I Love People Not Pixels does is that they focus on the demand and reducing the reduction of pornography consumption, because what they found is that pornography directly fuels sex trafficking. And so their whole heart is, how do we reach the man who is broken? How did he find himself in a place where he's purchasing? And they also go out on stings with Houston PD. So when they do stings and they arrest Johns, they're right there to tell that guy, hey, we have this class that you can go through, and you can possibly get your charges dropped if you complete this class. And so it's just healing, really. They're all about healing that brokenness of why a man got to a point to purchase another person.
Yeah. So at that event that y'all had, there was multiple organizations there. I remember that we talked about it last year, that there was a coffee truck as well.
Yeah. So Hebrews Community Coffee, which I totally love that because, I don't know, it's just so cute. Jeff and his wife, Marcia, have this coffee truck, and can't even really remember how I found them. I think a friend had tagged them in something on Facebook, and it was their name, truly, that caught my eye. And I just reached out and I said, hey, we're having this event. I know that you're in the Woodlands area, which is a little far away from Galveston County. And I said, would you be willing to come out? And oh man, he was on it, and he came out and he serves great coffee, and just, he has a great heart, and he just, I don't know. I mean, this is his heart, and he's wonderful at what he does. So
I would say this is your heart too, making this difference.
Absolutely.
How did this become like your calling? I don't know if it's for this season in your life or forever, because I know that you were formerly a missionary.
Yes.
And had, been other places all over the world, right?
Yeah.
And how did that end up switching from that being your focus to right here back? Well, you mentioned you're from Idaho. This is even home, but it's in the United States, right?
It is.
How did this become your passion? How did this become your heart?
Sure. So that is, I would say, a complex question, but it has a very relatable answer. So like I had said with John, how he found himself in this lane is through brokenness. And that's truly how our family, what had happened to us as well. So in 2015, we had sold everything. So at the end of 2015, we sold our house, we left our jobs, rehomed our dogs, everything. And we had tickets to go to Thailand. We were going to serve 2.5 years in Thailand. And prior to that, we have 3 children. Our middle son, when he was 12, we didn't know that he was struggling with pornography. And, you find yourself, we were, youth pastors, and our kids were raised in church, and like, how does this happen? What goes on? And we were not equipped to talk to him because we didn't know what to say. You have children. I'm not sure if you got a manual when you brought your kids home, but I did not. And so there's no turn to page 72 to talk to your kid about pornography. And so we did what we thought was right, and we took this uber religious aspect of what would Jesus say, and what does the Bible say about purity? And unfortunately, unknowingly, we just shamed him instead of truly being able to talk to him. So it didn't stop his consumption of pornography. He just hid it better. And then in 2015, so now he's 14, we were getting ready to go. We have our tickets, everything is ready. And he assaulted a young girl. And it was one of these things where you just step back and you just find yourself in this place of going how does this happen? What do we do? Who are we? Did God lie to us? What is going on with our children? And we had to just make this decision, so we couldn't leave. We believe in transparency, and we believe that secrets are in the dark, and that's where the enemy operates, and we were not going to operate in secret. So we were very transparent about everything that had happened, and we actually took our son down, turned him in for what he had done. And when you talk about
how old was he?
14.
Wow.
And you talk about an Abraham and Isaac kind of moment where you have to just say, God, my children are yours, and however this plays out and whatever happens, we're truly believing that you are God, you are in control. And it was a really bad season of our life, because then we found ourselves without a home, without jobs. We couldn't leave for Thailand. So we're just here going oh my gosh, what do we do? And some friends directed us to a prayer group that was going on in Houston. And they said, maybe just go there, see what's going on. And we showed up, and it was a lot of organizations in Houston that are anti-trafficking. And we sat there and listened to them, and just, I mean, but we were still just in a very broken part. This was only like 3 weeks after it all happened. And we drove away from that just realizing, okay, Lord, if we're going to be here and we're not leaving, then is this where you want us? And it just seemed like doors opened for us to start volunteering in places. And through serving God and serving these women, we were able to find our own healing. Our son is doing a lot better. He's 18 years old now. He's graduated high school, but he had to walk through a really tough thing. He had 18 months of probation and had to go through very extensive counseling. And just as a family to walk next to him through that healing. And that's what Love People Not Pixels does as well, is if you're struggling with pornography or if your marriage is deteriorating because of pornography consumption, they have people to walk alongside you and help you through those healing processes. So through that, so what the enemy was going to use to destroy our son, our ministry, our marriage, everything, God turned that very thing around. And now we're using that as a platform to go alongside parents and say, we literally know how it feels, or a married couple, or, and so through that brokenness, God made this ministry lane for us. So
how many kids do you have?
3.
3 kids?
Yeah.
And how many boys and girls?
2 boys. So I have a 23-year-old, 18-year-old, 16. So 16 is our girl, and she's a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever you have kids, you start to look at the world differently.
Yes.
So I have a son who is 7 years old, and he's the oldest. Mm-hmm. And my wife's pregnant, and we're gonna have another boy in March, and then I have a daughter that's 2. So right now we're just like trying to juggle, screen time. Like, do they get it? Like, again, if there is a manual for parenting, like the official, I want the official manual, right? That's the one I need. Like the one, like this one actually works.
Yeah,
there's a lot of content out there, but it all goes against each other. But you start to look at things differently, and it just, you realize, man, it's hard.
It is.
It's hard.
It is, because it's hard to navigate. There's just such a fine line for everything, because you want your children to experience things, but yet you don't want them to get hurt, and you want them to see things, but you don't want them, it's so much. Like I tell people, there's so many books out there about how to raise toddlers, but there's such minimal books on how to be a parent to adult children. I want to tell you, I'd much rather have a room of 2-year-olds.
I got some for you.
It's crazy, because when a 2-year-old breaks something, you're like, oh, you spilled milk, it's okay. But like when a 23-year-old, tires, oh, my tire is flat, or all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, that's like $200. And it's so much more costly to be a parent of adult children. And I found myself apologizing a lot to my parents lately. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did.
Well, my wife just tuned in on Facebook. If you're listening on 99.5 FM, you can always go stream video of everything and ask questions and get involved on KHEA Radio's Facebook page. If you're watching on KHEA Radio and you have any thoughts, questions, feel free to ask those. So, my wife just tuned in. And then my mom, before that, minutes ago, I was like looking down, because I remember, growing up, and in my head, I was like a perfect child, which isn't the case. Right. Is not the case. But what I find different is the aspect from grandparenting to parenting. I remember, the way my mom, and I'm sure it's like 100 times worse than like, you didn't let us, we never got to go to McDonald's, and now my son's like, let's go to McDonald's. It's like little silly things like that, but it's just funny how the rules change.
It is, and I saw that even with my parents. I'm like, what? You would never let us do that, but it really does take a village.
Yeah.
And so what's so awesome about this, I remember when we first stepped into this lane of ministry, and my parents were walking alongside us, helping us through our healing as well. And I remember the first time I shared with my mom and dad, I'm like, oh, we're going to go to the street. We're going to talk to women who are being prostituted, and we're going to strip clubs, and we're going to go talk to those women. My mom was just like, oh, this is so crazy. She didn't understand, because I think the Lord reveals things to us on timing that we can handle. There's different things that make you do something that maybe I'm going like, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. And so at that time, she didn't see what we saw in anti-trafficking. Well, now, so fast forward 4 years. So we've been in this movement for about 4 years. Now she lives in Idaho, and now she's all about how can we get involved in our area with the anti-trafficking organization. So I saw how God made this important to her, and it hit something in her own heart about like, okay, I may be in my 60s, but I still have a role to play. And so, and that's the thing about all of this, and nothing disqualifies you from, stepping in and saying, hey, how can I volunteer, or how can I give, or how can I serve? And so there's room for everybody.
So I know from conversations that me and you have had in the past, there's certain things that you look for in your community, like even in a brand new strip center.
Yes.
Right? There's certain things. But if somebody has never heard of, solicitation, prostitution going on in, in League City, Galveston County, Pearland, like these places, it sounds like, well, that's not happening. Maybe in Houston, because Houston's, big, and I read the articles and everything references, Houston whenever I look on the news, right?
Right.
Is there that stuff going on in these smaller cities as well?
Absolutely. So what we're finding is that Houston is really, or has really stepped up their game to fight back against exploitation and trafficking. But what we're seeing is they're putting the squeeze on a lot of these illicit massage parlors and a lot of these strip clubs and everything like that.
Do the illicit ones look like a normal massage place?
They do. And I'll touch on that in a second, because we had something really great happen. But what's happening is their ordinances are a lot tighter than ours are in Galveston County and like in the Pearland area. So what we're finding is that more massage or spas are popping up in Galveston County, Montgomery, Fort Bend, and because they're leaving Harris County because of the ordinances and coming to these smaller communities, opening up as reflexology and all sorts of foot massaging and stuff like that. And so you'll see kind of like, I don't remember that place being there, and because they're new and they're opened. And so I think now it's gonna be kind of a rough estimate, but between about Seabrook and Friendswood, I think there's about 30 illicit massage parlors. And so that's 30 too many to me. And so Houston has over 400. That's a greater Houston area. But I think 30 is just too many for me. One is too many.
I mean, if you can spout that number out, why don't they just go and knock on the door and say, hey, stop, shut this down.
Yes, so
you're done.
Actually, we did have like this so Tuesday night, so through our collective group, we have a lot of, like we had talked about, organizations that come and are represented. So there's going to be Love People Not Pixels. There's Be the Light. So Be the Light does a lot of outreach in our juvenile detention facilities. Providence Outreach Ministries does strip club outreach and illicit spa outreach. Halos to Helos. Heels. Oh my gosh, this is such a Heels to Halos. Sorry, Megan.
Heels to Halos. Okay.
So they do a lot of strip club outreach, and they actually have an aftercare home for women coming out of the industry. Resource Crisis Center in Galveston that serves domestic violence and the community. Then we have Embrace Grace that also serves our single parent or single pregnant mother. We have the Crisis Pregnancy Center from Texas City coming, Refuge for Women, who is out of Lake Jackson, and they're just bought an amazing home for aftercare, and so they're hoping to receive their first women this summer. So this is really big in our area. We have Unbound Houston that does a lot of education awareness. Then obviously Hebrews Coffee, and then we're going to be there. But I went out on Tuesday night with Cecilia, who is the director or the founder of Providence Outreach, and we said, let's do spa recon, like we're like some kind of spies or something.
Just like doing the research to see, like, is this place legit or
Yeah, so we went to
not?
13 of them that night, and there was a new one where she's like, I haven't really got to this one yet, but I want to get to this one. And we pulled up, and all of a sudden we were looking at the door. I'm like, what is that on the door? And I get out, and it's a sign from Webster PD and the fire marshal that they had closed the spa down. So what's happening is people are starting to complain, or there's been complaints, and this is what's so awesome about it. They go in with the fire marshal and they find things that aren't right.
Random code. Yeah.
Yep. And so they shut them down using the laws that they're able to use. And so that happens, and that works.
Yeah, not like prostitution laws, like, hey, your sprinkler system, the door, it's little, things like that.
Yep. And so, but that works. That gets these places shut down, because if you can't prove prostitution is going on, okay, well, there's other things that we can do to get the door shut. And so that was really awesome, where we just pulled up and we're like, oh my gosh, this is already closed. And so thank you, Webster PD, for, doing what you do and keeping your community safe.
Wow.
Yeah.
You ran through all of those different organizations.
Yeah.
Those are all ones that are going to be at the second
Yep.
annual collective.
Yep, they're going to be there, and they're going to have a table set up. And so if you're interested in volunteering or you want to know more about them, you can just go up to their table and talk with them. And so that's what we encourage. And the event is to connect the community to these organizations. And so then, we value our community. We love our community. But if the community doesn't know what's going on or how they can help, well, then you kind of have this disabled community. So that's our heart.
You also mentioned earlier that you don't claim to be like an event planner. What have you learned from the first event that maybe you're like, okay, yes, now I know, I'm excited. This second event's going to be this much better.
Yeah, so in the first event, we didn't give enough time for the community to go and visit with the tables. And it felt kind of rushed, but that was like the whole point. So I kind of thought, well, that was kind of silly not to, put enough time. So this time around, we're opening the doors at 6 for people to come and get coffee and get a pastry, and then they're going to have time to go around before the event starts. So they can come at 6. You can come a little earlier if you want. We'll be there all day, but, well, don't come at noon. But, I mean, unless you want to help set up tables, then by all means.
There's always work to do.
There's always work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just an opportunity to come and meet and greet and have some fellowship prior to the event, and then the event starts. And then there'll be time after the event. And we're having it at a church, and so we're not going to have to be like rushed out, but it is a Thursday, so I know obviously people have school and work and stuff the next day. But
yeah. With kids, like I was talking to my wife about this last night. So we have Wednesday night service. It starts at 7 a.m. And I was like, why don't they start? What if it started like earlier so I can be in bed by 10? Like, and she was like, we're old. I was like, yeah, we're getting there. But man, it used to not be that way. It's funny. Now it's like, well, I want my son in bed by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because he needs his like 15 hours of sleep or whatever, something ridiculous, right?
It is. And that's what we try to keep that in mind. But we have a lot of really great things that are going on in this event that we wanted to make sure that everybody had an adequate amount of time to be able to share. And so the people that are coming can, soak it up.
Yes. So I saw some stuff on your social media feed about a movie. Where did an idea come from? After y'all's first collective, the inaugural collective event, were you already brainstorming, we are going to do a film, we're going to do a movie? When did that idea come? How did it come into being? Because I think at the second annual, is there going to be a screening of it?
There is, and so we're really excited about it. After the event last year, a lot of things came out of that event, and one of them was when you have an event at a public place, you have to get like a sheriff, like a deputy to come to do security. So here's this deputy is standing there, and I kind of look at him and I said, hey, hi, this is my name, and do you know what this event's about? He's like, no. And I said, okay, well, it's about, bringing awareness to Galveston County about exploitation and trafficking issues. And he kind of bent over and he looked in the room and he said, where's the law enforcement?
To have their own table.
Yep. And right. I thought, you're right. That is a good question. So then in May, we hosted a law enforcement luncheon where we had HPD Vice come down, and we had DPS come down and talk about trafficking. And we had. You
said DPS, like the public.
Yes.
Department of Public.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't want to say they're like the FBI, but I think they are something I need to probably.
Okay.
So don't hold me to that. But they came down and talked about trafficking and different stuff. And we had our district attorney came to that lunch. And so thank you, Jack Rohde, for always supporting what's going on in the community. And he had some of his investigators come, and we had the Texas City police chief came, and we had some undercover detectives come. So it was really great to see like our law enforcement is really wanting to know like, hey, how can we really, help what's going on? But then prior to that, we had been doing outreach for about 3 years at that time. And you go to these outreaches, and we do find a lot of value in it, because we're reaching the women and we're loving on them and encouraging them and giving them an option to leave the industry. But then you kind of have this moment where you go like, what if? Like, what if we reach the young ladies and men when they're 12 and 13 and we educate them and make them aware of like what's really out there and how they can protect themselves and keep them safe? Like, what if we did that? Then maybe we wouldn't have to reach them in the strip clubs and out on the street. Maybe if they made the decision now to be cautious, about what they're doing online, we won't have to reach them later. And then all of a sudden we kind of have this, I don't know, like I shared with you, like I have a lot of ideas and like,
which is good.
it is, but my poor husband has to try to help navigate so much of that. So I'm sorry, Kirk, that you have to deal with my brain. But I just, we said, well, like, what if we did this film and it was like a first person perspective of this young lady. And, we just kind of had this brainstorming thing. And then my mom and my dad live in Idaho, and she sent me a message and she's like, hey, remember Travis from our church? And so Travis was just 17 at that time, and he was a senior in high school. She said, I made this short film to try to get a college scholarship, and your dad and I are in it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's really going on up there? And she says, well, actually, I'm not in it. I filmed it for him. And then I was like, oh, I need to see this. But then when she sent it to me, it was just done to a song. So it was acting. Done
almost like a music video type thing, but like a storyline over it?
No, it was like the acting, but then like there was just music overlaid. And
okay, gotcha.
And so it was kind of like the prodigal son type. And so, man, it was good. And so
and your mom filmed?
Yes, my mom filmed. She's great. And
cool.
And my dad was in it, and my dad had hurt his hip at that time, so he was in a wheelchair. So I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, this totally just fed into the drama, But so I said, man, like off the cuff, wouldn't it be great if Travis came down and filmed for us? And so that was about February of last year, and then about March, and then he was standing in our living room in June. And we had no script, no budget, and we just said, all right, Lord, like this is literally yours. And there's grooming techniques, actual steps that groomers use to reach our children online through like social media platforms and online gaming. And so we just showed up at places, and here's our cast, which my daughter is one of the cast members, and she's so great. She just helps our ministry out so much. And we just would show up and say, okay, you say something like this, and then you respond. Well, what do I say? They'd be like, what do I say? Like, what would you say? If you're hanging out, we wanted it like natural, where it wasn't Hollywood. It was as if you're sitting and watching this group of girls interact together. And so,
but it's different whenever there's a camera there.
It is.
Yeah.
It was funny. There's a lot of
or
funny
adults.
things. Yes. Yeah, because like in your brain, you think how you're gonna respond, and you don't. It doesn't make sense. And then when you see it, you're like, oh God, that was terrible. Like, why did I do that? And there's one part where so I play the mom in it. And
was this your debut, like on like acting?
Look at me.
Did you do any theater or anything in school?
I did, actually. So I graduated from Tech City High School, and I was in their, I was a thespian. So I was actually like vice president at one point. So
so you have a little bit of a background to pull from. That's awesome.
A little bit to pull from. Yeah. And, and I think because I believe, I believed in what we were doing. And I think when you're sold in, when you buy into something,
mm-hmm.
You're more passionate about it. So there's one part where I have to call the police because at this point my daughter hasn't come home, and I have to call the police. And Travis is like, "Okay, can you cry?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, this is so weird." And he's like, "Okay, if you can cry, that would be great." And I'm thinking, like, how do you like make yourself cry? So I sat on the side of the bed, and all of a sudden it was like I just thought, like, how many parents have made that phone call? And it just kind of hit me.
Really
like
put yourself in the role.
Yes,
wow.
like how many mothers and fathers have sat on the end of their bed, like, I'm going to like cry, but then had to call the police and say these things. And it was just like in that moment, I have like a fake call, and I'm like, hello. And it just like, it hit me. It's like, as a mom, like what would I do if I was in this position? And I just started crying because it was very emotional. And then he cut, and his face was like, just staring at me. He's like, oh my,
wow.
Okay, we have to do that again. I'm like, what? No. So we had to film it like 3 or 4 times. And, but this film is truly our heart of stories that we've heard from women that we've come in contact with, parents that we've talked to. And so it really is based on thousands of real life events.
So this film will be screened. Is that going to be the debut at the Collective?
Debut. Yep, it is. And so we're excited. It's about 20 minutes. And so it's not like long, and it's not short. So, but our heart is really to get it into schools, because when you're talking about the demographic that this is going to impact, well, our schools are full of that demographic. So our heart is to get it into schools and use it as awareness, and get it into churches, into youth groups, in law enforcement, and then not even just here in Texas, right? Trafficking isn't a Texas issue. It's a global, but it's a national issue. So like, how can we get it in the hands of schools in, New Mexico and Oklahoma and all those, because those students are just as at risk as our students here.
Right now it's 9:38 a.m. on a Thursday. This is Kickstart. I'm Gardy. I am talking to Stephanie Clausen with Missionaries for Hope, and we're focusing on an event that's taking place. When is that event? What's the name of it?
Yeah, so it's next Thursday, January 23rd, and the event is called the Second Annual Collective Event.
Okay. So one thing that stood out to me that you mentioned earlier, you said online, and then you also said gaming. Yes. So there is communication that takes place in gaming, and I guess that I didn't realize that could be the issue, like that kind of stuff could be happening. So that happens in gaming?
Absolutely, it does. And so you figure any platform that our students are on where there's interaction via online is an opportunity for somebody with ill intentions to contact your student or your child. And we're seeing it more where, like, there was that video where that guy tapped into the girl's camera, that young girl's camera in her bedroom, and was talking to her through the cameras in her room. And, and the thing is like, there's people out there that their intentions are not good. And our job is, as parents or as believers, is to make people aware, like, hey, did you know? And so then that parent can, better protect their family. And so, online gaming, we're seeing that more and more, that students are being reached through online gaming.
Yeah. The other thing as a parent that may be hard to keep up with is like new apps.
Yes.
New technology comes out every day. There's like apps where you can hide stuff. And like, I think of, new social media or like TikTok. I don't have that. I feel like I'm too old. Like I don't need that. But that's a way people can communicate and just do different stuff.
Absolutely. And so you figure there's always an opposite to everything. So if I'm on Facebook because I want to keep track of my family who lives far away from me and my friends who have babies and stuff, so my intentions on social media are good. But then, of course, right, the opposite of that is, not good. And so then there's those people that use the same exact platforms that we're all on for much different intentions. And so I think what it is, it's just saying, parents, okay, come on. The world wasn't what it was 10 years ago. And now we have 7 and 8-year-olds walking around with smartphones, and they have access to every single bit of information under the sun. And we can say, oh, we put these blocks or we do this, but it's not enough. Like, we can't rely on another company to make an app that protects our children. We have to do that. So we have to be able to sit our children down and say, we need to have these hard conversations. We need to talk about what happens if someone does reach out to you that you've never talked to. Who should you tell? What is really, and sit down and make eye contact and say, okay, we care enough to say we're going to put privacy blocks on this. And it's not because we don't trust you. We love you. It's just that we have a lack of trust in other people. And so we've had to sit down with our daughter. We just allowed her to have Instagram like last night. And pretty much what it was we said, our expectations, that you're not to talk to people on social media that you've never met face to face. And if anything happens, please come and talk to us. And she's like, okay, because that's our rule. You can't have people on your social media if you've never met them in person. And so, but our kids aren't doing that. They have 400 followers. You can't tell me that you've met. I have 400 friends. No, you don't. So It's one of those things where it's just parents being educated and empowered enough with the right tools to sit down and say, this is the truth of what's really going on.
Yeah,
and
those conversations, they're not easy to have.
No.
And you don't really know the right words to say.
Yeah. Well, like our testimony, we found ourselves in that same. We didn't know how to talk to our son about pornography. We didn't know the first thing about it because pornography to us was, in the 80s and Playboy, and it was just a magazine, and it's not like that now. There's so, oh my gosh, there's hundreds of thousands of pornography sites out there that are so easily accessible. And so us as parents, we need to be able to sit down and say, guys, this is what you should be aware of. This is how you should conduct yourself. Ladies, this is the expectation. If you don't, pornography is such an unrealistic expectation of what relationships are. But with this hypersexualized world, people are looking to pornography for, relationship. Like, I've literally heard parents say, it's a good sex ed tool. Like, oh my gosh, like, are you kidding me? That's not reality, because what is it? 64% of pornography shows abuse and violence towards women. Well, I'm really sorry. I don't want my son to think that that's how a real relationship should go. So it's really just sitting down, knowing those facts, understanding what they mean, and then taking your child and say, hey, we need to talk about these things. And it's embarrassing, but it's needed.
Yeah. Well, there was something you were saying earlier about the love people, not pixels, and how they work with guys and probably with girls too, to help them, I guess, where they're at.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're a parent and you know that your child is struggling with pornography, and again, like we were, you don't know what to do, you can reach out to Love People Not Pixels, and they'll connect you with like a parenting mentor. I get kind of like somebody to walk alongside you, encourage you, give you resources, and help you be able to help your child through this. Or if you're a married couple, they do demand intervention. So they, like I said, they go out with Houston PD, and when a guy is arrested for purchasing sex, they're right there to say, hey, here's our card. We have a class. And that they're working with like Montgomery County and places like that, to where if the guy completes the class, his case could potentially be dropped. And so, but it's a class talking about how pornography fuels trafficking, and it's looking these guys in the face and saying, like, your purchasing of a person is not okay.
Yeah.
And how can we help you?
I wonder if there, and maybe there is, and you probably don't have this on hand, but like the statistics of that working, like them taking that class, it actually hitting home, and just not getting in that situation
so
again.
2019 was when they first rolled out that class, and so they probably don't have, really great statistics yet. But then you kind of think the only way you'd be able to know the statistic is if the guy either got arrested again, so then you could be like, okay, maybe we need to tweak the training. But they have done a lot of research, and they're very thorough, and they're very good at what they do. And so I'm just believing that this class is really going to be impactful for those men.
Yeah, it's a step.
Yeah, absolutely. It's better than nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Right now it is 9:46. This is KHEARadio.com, 99.5 FM, talking to Stephanie Clausen with Missionaries for Hope. And there's a lot of awareness, I think, that needs to be spread. Would you say that the average, parent knows that there's potentially illicit massage parlors and what to look for on their child's cell phone, or just signs if they're talking to someone and potentially running away? Right. Do they know? The average person?
No, probably not. I mean, because that was us at one time. I mean, the only reason why I'm able to talk to you about this is because I've sat in events and trainings and conferences and everything like that. But this is me 4 years into it. So the average parent was me 4 years ago that didn't know how to talk to my child about pornography, didn't know about exploitation happening around me, didn't know that there was an illicit massage parlor right next to the Subway that I eat at. I didn't know that because we kind of just go along in our life and we focus on what we need to focus on, and everything else around us is just kind of a blur. So this is an opportunity for us to say, hey, stop, look around you, talk to your children, talk to your spouse, pay attention to what's going on, because when you see it, all of a sudden it's like you can't unsee it. So when I go with friends and I'll go, like we're driving, I'm like, like that right there, that's an illicit massage parlor. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I drive this way every single time. I've never even noticed that place. And that's what it is. It's bringing awareness of like, yes, it's here. Maybe we live in League City or Dickinson or Texas City, and we think our community is great, which, by the way, it is. But there's things going on behind the scenes that most of us don't know about.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do, awareness.
Yes. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you did want to bring up today?
let me say, I try to write down little notes for myself, but it works sometimes and it doesn't. Yeah, so one of our main speakers that we're having too, so it's a young lady who I think she said back in 1999, she entered the porn industry. And she was in the industry for about 7 years until she became a Christian, and God's been restoring her. She's going to be speaking at the event. It's very, very awesome because you kind of get to hear firsthand that pornography isn't what Hollywood tries to sell it as. It's not as glamorous as you think. And then Love People Not Pixels will kind of back that up with how pornography fuels trafficking and what does that look like? What does it look like around you?
That's like the first step.
Yes.
Is what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like we're kind of laying like this foundation of kind of this is where it's coming from, and then this is what's being built off of it. And then our film is going to show like, okay, we're talking about the demand through pornography. Well, where's the supply coming from? And the supply is coming from online grooming. So Sergeant John Wall of the Houston Police Department made a kind of a shocking statement about a month and a half ago where he said 90% of grooming for trafficking is happening online. I mean, that's huge. And so when you look around and you see, 7 and 8 year olds and 9-year-olds walking around with a phone, you kind of have to go, I wonder if they know what's really going on out there. I wonder if the parent has really talked with their child about that. So yeah. So that's what we're excited about with the event, is just being able for people to come in and say, okay, how can I get involved? And then we're going to kind of do a call to action. So our ministry is partnered with Love People Not Pixels to bring a training down here of how to shut down brothels. And so it's been in the works for about 1.5 years, and we're just at this point where we're ready to kind of launch that, to take you as a community member and empower you and train you on how you can take maybe 2 or 3 spas and go through the legal process of getting them closed. And so we're literally going to take our community and say, this is what's going on. We're going to pull the veils, off of your heads, and we're going to show you the truth. But these are tools that you can use now to make these positive impacts in your community. So it's not just about like how I can be aware or educated or you, but it's like, how can we make our community safer as our children grow up in it and as we continue to live in them? So we're going to kind of have a call to action of, if you're interested in this training, then sign up and you'll be contacted when it's ready.
All right.
Yeah,
so
we're excited.
When is the event? Where is the event? Is there any cost associated? How can you find out more information about it?
Definitely. So the event is called the second annual collective event. It's January 23rd at Dominion Church, located at 6400 Calder Drive in Dickinson. And then also thank you to Dominion for opening up your doors and allowing us to come in and use your space. And so it's wonderful. There's no cost, so it's free to the public, and we're going to have coffee provided. So come out and get you a latte and a pastry, meet some really awesome organizations, and come and hear how you, as just the unknowingly community member, possibly can really truly make a positive and lasting effect in your community.
All right. So thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
This is KHEA Radio 99.5 FM.
Dedicated.
All right, Facebook. Feel free to share this video. You can ask questions on here as well. And if I know the answer, I'll get Stephanie to see your question or your thoughts. So, all right.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.
Be blessed.